Hi, welcome to part 2 of chapter 2's video content. So far what we've done here, we've created a simple formula where there's a single operator. So when I click on cell C3, I can see in my formula bar I have equal D3 divided by 12. And then we also covered complex formulas, where in this case I went and calculated what I have here is in parentheses equal in parentheses D3 minus E3. What's the difference between what I spent this year as opposed to last year? And then I divide it by last year's amount so that I can see the percent change. And in this particular case, household utilities was the exact same, so I had 0%, and I have various amounts. Now, if I'm spending less, I have a negative amount, and if I'm spending more, I have a positive amount. So, gee, what happens if I oopsed on the formula? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up to cell F3, and I'm going to double-click on it, and let's say I did not use my parentheses. Again, order of operations. And if I did not have the parentheses there, well, first of all, I have pound, pound, pound. Basically, what pound, pound, pound stands for is I don't have enough space to show what I have here. So I'm going to bring my mouse between columns F and G, and I'm going to drag over to make it larger. So I have a percent change of a really, really crazy number. That's erroneous result because it's poorly constructed. The formula's not right, and that just doesn't make sense to have something so large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo, and I'll undo again to get back to the formula where I have my percents that are correct using my parentheses. So the next thing I want to mention is I know that we were talking about using the control tilde sign. Well, there's another way that I can do this if I don't remember how to set that up. Is I'm on the home menu tab right now. If I come over to the formulas menu tab, and I have an option here called show formulas, and again there's the control plus the mark here, and what I'm going to do here is if I click on my show formulas, it would show me my formulas, and it's a toggle, so if I click on it a second time, it just brings it back to showing me the values and then the formulas. And again, think about the relative referencing here. I have blue and then red. Equal D3, which is blue to blue. The E3s are the reds. And if I come and sit on cell F9, I can also see that we have the colors showing there. So I don't really need to show my formulas right now, but I wanted you to see that that is how you would see your formulas. Now, on pages 118 and 119 of the book, it talks about trace precedence, and we're going to leave that for later. It is in here where it will show arrows that indicate which cells affect the value of currently used cells. So the book talks about it, but we'll cover that in the future content. I want to concentrate more right now on the next section of chapter 2, which deals with statistical functions. So bring your eyes, if you will, down towards the bottom here. And what we have here is we have the number of categories, we have average speed, we have min, and we have max. If you look on page 122, we have a number of objectives that we want to cover here. We want to use the sum function. We want to use absolute references to calculate percent of totals. We want to use the count function, the average function, the min and max functions. We want to use AutoSum to quickly insert statistical functions. And we have a number of other ones that we want to consider here. On page 123, there's a list of commonly used statistical functions. So the first one is this thing called the sum function. So if you come down onto cell C12, what we have are a couple of options. I'm going to show you a handful of different ways that you can put the sum function in. So all formulas, even though it's a function we're talking about, all formulas will start with the equal sign. And now I'm going to type in SUM for sum. Notice that the function will start to pop up, and it says adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Okay, that's fine. Now I'm going to show you a handful of different ways to do this, and you decide which way works the best for you. So I'm going to use my left parenthesis, and I'm going to go up to the top of my range of cells to add, and I'm going to highlight or select. Notice the blinking marquee around them, and as I highlight or select, I can see it forming in my formula, equals sum, left parentheses, C3 colon C11. Now, I could be lazy and just hit enter without putting the right parenthesis in. Because I'm not doing anything else with this formula, Excel will say, oh, she forgot the right parenthesis, I'll put it in. Totally up to you on that. But I'm able to put or click on the enter key and I get a number. And notice that if I double click to sit on this, I see equals sum from C3 colon C11. Okay. Now I'm going to undo and show you another way to do it. Equals sum, left parenthesis. I could start at the bottom and drag up. Even though I started here at C11 and then went up to C3, Excel will still put it in the order of top down. So I have C3 to C11, and I still see the 1496. Yet another way that I can do it is equal sum, left parenthesis. Now in this particular example, what I'm going to do, the term is referred to as anchoring. So I'm going to arrow up once using my arrow keys on my keyboard, and I'm starting at cell C11. I'm going to click on the dot or the period key. That's my anchor key. And now I can highlight up to see what it is that I want to sum together. And hit enter, I get the same 1496. So, last way that I want to talk about this is, let me go back and sit on my home menu. And on my ribbon for home, I have this option way over called AutoSum. And I'm going to not click on the drop down, I'm just going to click on AutoSum. And notice that the system automatically puts the equal in, the sum function in, the parentheses, and it says, I think this is what you want me to be adding up or to be summing. And you can either accept it by hitting the enter key, or you can modify it to fill in with whatever it is that you want to see there. So it's rather cool that we have this option of how we can deal with this. So I'm going to click enter, and there's my 1496. Now, the formula works nicely. I really want to do the same thing with my annual spend and with my last year amount. So what I could do is I could just drag across, and I'll see the numbers. And you'll notice on figure 2.12 on page 125, you'll see these same values. Now, what happens if I went and I selected the percent change? Well, that's a little funny because it's not really summing up. It's going to be something a little bit different that we want to do with this percent change. So that's not exactly what we're going to consider here. So I'm going to click on the undo to remove that particular one. Okay, so what we've done here is we've done our totals for our monthly spend, our annual, and our last year spend. But if we make a copy over to percent change, notice that it says $0. Well, we don't want it to be $0 because we're talking about a percent change. And if we're sitting on this cell and we click on AutoSum, the same kind of thing happens. It's like, well, it really didn't do quite what it was that we wanted. This just added up percent changes, but every single value has a different value. So this relatively, it doesn't really work for us. So that's not what we want. What we want to do is we want to have the same formula that we had here in miscellaneous. We want, notice how I'm sitting in cell F11. I see equal D11 minus E11 divided by E11. I want to have the same kind of formula set up here. So what I can do is just copy that formula down. So I can do a copy and a paste, or I could have just used my skinny crosshair. And what this basically is telling me, I'm going to escape to get rid of the blinking marquee, is that this last year compared to this year, my annual spend will be 1.7% less. So I like whenever I have something that's less, because that sort of works for me. Okay, so I have one column left that I haven't accommodated for, and it's this column B, percent of total. So what I want to do here is I want to look at my annual spend as it relates to my total. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off with equal, because it's a formula. I'm going to take my annual spend and I'm going to divide it by my total spend. And this will give me what percent of my total annual spend is on household utilities. And when I hit enter, I get 0.16. Well, I want to see that as a percent. So I'm going to sit on cell B3 and I'm going to click on the home menu numbers section, click on percent. So I have 17%. Now, if I want to show it as a percent because I want to follow along with the textbook, I have 16.7%. Now, if I was to scroll down or to copy down using any of the manners that I can copy, so I can do copy paste, or I can just grab my skinny crosshair and drag down, notice that I get all sorts of errors. What's an error? Anytime you see a pound sign. So I see a pound div 0, and I think you can probably understand here what that means. The formula or function used is dividing by 0 or empty cells. So let's take a look and do the control tilde, or actually it's technically a control accent mark. And notice what happens here is if I click on cell B3, I can see that my annual spend, the blue, is divided by my sum. But notice that my food, yes, there's my annual spend for food, but it moved down. It continued to do the relative referencing. But I don't want my bottom part of my formula, or the divided by, to be jumping down. I always want it to sit on cell D12. So I have to tell the system, don't change this, keep it at D12. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to undo just to get back up to here. I have to modify this formula. Now, if I had done it from the start, that would have been fine, but because the formula is already there, I can just correct it from here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click up inside of where the D12 is. So you can see my insertion point, my blinking insertion point here is between the D and the 12. Now, if you have a newer laptop, the function, the F4 key, not F and 4, but to the right of the escape key, you'll see F1, F2, F3, F4. If you click on the F4 once, you will see dollar signs. So $D, $12. This stands for absolute. In other words, wherever you see a D12 with the dollar signs in front of it, when you copy the formula down, it will not take into account anything related to relative referencing. It will leave the dollar signs there. If you click a second time, you'll see the dollar sign is in front of the row number. Click again, the dollar sign's in front of the column number. Click again, relative referencing. So I want to select where I have equal D3 divided by $D, $12. Now, if the F4 key does not work for you, you can just type in the dollar sign in front of the column and in front of the row number. Now, my answer is the same here, but now when I copy down, I should see all the percents. And if I go to my total, it should add up to the 100%, which it does. So that's nice. So this here, most of these were set up using relative referencing. So again, control. These are all relative referencing, but when I get to the dollar signs, this part is relative referencing, the D3, but the D12, because the dollar signs are in front of the D and in front of the 12, that means I am using absolute cell referencing. Notice that as I click on them, this is 2 over to the right, but I'm always keeping that 12, that D12. This is 2 over to the right, but I'm always keeping the D12. Thank you. We'll continue on with part 3.